In our past life, my sister fancied the majestic dragon and married him without hesitation. I chose the unremarkable Merman. She thought she would become the queen of the dragon clan, but the dragon failed his tribulation, and as his partner, she was implicated and nearly lost her life. Yet unexpectedly, the Merman obtained the sea god's inheritance, becoming royalty of the sea. And everyone knew I was the future queen. At the victory banquet, my sister poisoned my wine, reborn into a new life. My sister rushed eagerly to the mermaid. The queen's throne shall be mine. But my sister didn't know that mermaids are inherently cruel, taking pleasure in tormenting others. Our family belongs to the human aristocracy. To maintain our status among humans and for a trace of dragon essence, we've always maintained marital alliances with the dragon clan. In our previous life, when my sister and I were choosing husbands, the mermaid clan suddenly arrived with a token. Seeking my sister's hand in marriage, my sister fell head over heels for the handsome and majestic dragon Kian, crying and begging to marry him. So father had no choice but to betroth me to the mermaid instead. But when the dragon failed his heavenly tribulation, my sister as his partner suffered the consequences. Fortunately, father arrived just in time to save her. Even so, my sister became completely disabled. The merman I married unexpectedly inherited the sea god's legacy, becoming royalty. My sister, jealous that I would become the future queen, poisoned me. 1. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself reborn on the day of the suitor selection, but by the time I was reborn, my father had already betrothed me to the merman jewels. Gazing at the plain-looking mermaid beside me, a pang of sorrow rose in my heart. I never thought that even after rebirth, nothing could be changed. Just as I was in despair, my sister suddenly declared, "I don't want to marry Kian, I want to marry Jules." Upon hearing this, the crowd erupted in uproar, and the face of the man beside her darkened instantly. Seeing the excitement in my sister's eyes, I knew she had been reborn too. In this life, my sister actually took advantage of our father's favor and directly snatched the marriage arrangement from my hands. Father's expression darkened upon hearing my sister's words. "Luna, marriage is no child's play." My sister eagerly stepped beside the mermaid, pushing me away. Caught off guard, I nearly fell. But fortunately, a hand steadied me. I looked up and saw it was Kian. Only then did elder sister realize her impropriety and quickly said, "Father, as you said, marriage is no child's play. Jules originally sought to marry me. We cannot break our promise. Moreover, my heart belongs to Jules." As she spoke, elder sister's face flushed with shyness. Seeing her like this, father sighed deeply and consented. I wasn't the least bit surprised. Elder sister was the only daughter of the first wife, who passed away after giving birth to her, so father had always favored her. From childhood, elder sister was always the first to make choices. She would even take what remained afterward. I watched my biased father with cold eyes when suddenly I felt warmth in my palm. It was Kian holding my hand, his eyes filled with warmth, thawing my heart that had been frozen by my father's cruelty. My elder sister smugly linked arms with the mermaid, looking at us with disdain, as we passed each other. I heard my sister whisper to me, "Little sister, in this life, you shall die alongside the dragon. The throne of Empress belongs to me now." I lowered my head to conceal the amusement in my eyes. My foolish sister, spoiled by our father, has grown utterly unaware of her own limitations. Mermaids are inherently cruel, taking pleasure in tormenting others. In my past life, he tortured me until not a single patch of skin remained unharmed. Moreover, my sister's last-minute change of groom has likely earned the resentment of this petty-minded mermaid. Father gathered the world's most precious treasures for my sister as her dowry, and he even took away my own dowry. Father said to me, "Your sister is marrying far away, and to the mermaid clan at that. You're marrying well, so just let your sister have these mundane things." Seeing father's blatant favoritism, my heart ached, and I lowered my head in sorrow. Kian couldn't bear to see me like this. He took my hand and whispered, "Our dragon clan has many treasures. I'll have someone bring them over soon. Don't worry." Seeing the sparkle in Kian's eyes, I couldn't help but smile. After spending these past few days together, I've discovered that Kian is a very cheerful person. Though he carries the pride of a dragon, he never looks down on anyone because of it, unlike Jules. My peripheral vision caught Jules, whose expression had turned rather unpleasant. In my past life as Jules' wife, I had thoroughly deciphered every shift of his moods. My sister's previous actions had already made Jules very unhappy, and now with our father saying such things, clearly looking down on the mermaid clan, it made the prideful Jules even angrier. I couldn't bear watching my father and sister displaying such familial affection, so I wanted to take Kian and leave, but my sister suddenly stopped us. She said to Kian, "My younger sister has poor health, isn't as talented as me, and even has some difficulties with bearing children, but since she's married to you, she's your wife, you mustn't look down on her just because of these things." Even now my sister is still putting me down. She was deliberately making things difficult for me, and I looked at Kian with some nervousness. Kian gave his sister a disgusted glance and said, No need for your concern, miss, since Mira is marrying me. I'll naturally protect her completely. To me, Mira is the finest woman in the world. Hearing Kian's words, my sister's face twisted in anger. She hadn't expected him to say such things. Listening to Kian's words and feeling the warmth of his hand, my heart melted completely, and tears fell. Thinking of Kian's failed tribulation, my gaze grew resolute. In this lifetime, I'll spare no effort to protect Kian. On the day my sister and I were to be married, Father wept like a child. Just as I began feeling moved, I overheard Father whisper to my sister, "Are you certain about marrying that Merman? It's not too late to back out. We can always send your younger sister in your stead." My face turned cold, and so did Kian's and Jules's. Father had already spoken very softly, but with Kian and Jules's keen senses, they could hear every word clearly. Seeing Father in such a befuddled state, I didn't want to say anything more to him and walked towards Kian. Kian pulled me aside. His expression looking rather unpleasant, I groaned inwardly, not knowing what to say. Though Kian was angry, his movements remained gentle, and he even took out some exquisite pastries. Seeing my restrained demeanor, his expression softened as he said, "Though I'm angry, I know this has nothing to do with you. I won't take it out on you." My eyes reddened slightly as I nodded. Watching my father and sister, I couldn't help but find it amusing. Their picky attitude towards the goods had already displeased Kian, let alone that vindictive mermaid. Fortunately in this life, I managed to escape. My sister insisted on coming back to the Dragon Clan with us no matter what. Her face was full of deep affection for my sake, as she held my hand and said, "I'm truly worried about your poor health. I won't feel at ease until I see you well. Only then can I peacefully leave for the mermaid realm." Although Kian found it somewhat strange, he didn't say anything. I don't believe my sister genuinely cares about me. She wants to witness Kian's failed tribulation and see me die alongside him. "Sister, you're going to be disappointed this time," I smiled and said. "Sister, aren't you going to ask brother-in-law's opinion?" Without hesitation, sister replied, "It doesn't matter." Too, watching Jules' annoyed expression, the smile on my face deepened. Marriage is a significant event for dragon clans, especially when it's the Yen Master's wedding. Surrounded by people, my sister stood in the corner, consumed by jealousy. She's always been like this, and seeing me being the center of attention must have been unbearable for her. Seizing the moment when no one was around me, she stepped forward. With a haughty tone, she said, "Mira, enjoy these days while you can, because they won't last long." I looked at my sister and couldn't help asking her, "Why can't you stand to see me doing well?" This was a question I'd wanted to ask her in my previous life. My sister said, "A bastard born from a whore deserves to be called my sister." As if remembering something, she giggled. "That whore mother of yours killed herself right after giving birth to you, just to spare your life." Before she could finish speaking, I slapped her across the face. My sister covered her face and glared at me viciously. "I was going to spare your life, but since you're so ungrateful, you can die with Kian." The day of Kian's tribulation soon arrived, and the entire dragon clan was tense, and my brainless sister, with her daily smirk of schadenfreude, made the clansmen seethe with silent anger. Her gaze towards me carried pity, but even more so, schadenfreude. Before the tribulation, Kian told me we couldn't form a bond yet. It turns out a dragon's tribulation scales with their power. Their bonded partner must match their strength, or they'll become dead weight. I finally understood why Kian failed his tribulation in our past life. It must be my dear sister, who insisted on forming the pact relentlessly, that caused Kian's death. No wonder in the previous life, she was sent back home after Kian died, on the day of the tribulation. My sister excitedly approached me and said, "Mira, beg me, and I'll ask Father to spare your life." I looked at her calmly and said disdainfully, "No need." My look of disdain infuriated my sister, who snarled at me with a twisted face. "What are you pretending for? Do you think just because Kian is dead, you can live?" Hearing this, the dragon clansmen nearby couldn't hold back anymore, clenching their fists and grabbing my sister by the collar. But they still had some sense left. Not wanting to embarrass me, watching my clansmen barely restraining their anger, I waved my hand and said, "I've already married your young master, which makes me one of the dragon clan. Though she is my sister, well, just don't hit her face. After all, she still needs to get married someday." The elder sister was thoroughly beaten by the furious dragon clan. She cried out in pain, "How dare you disrespect the Empress? Are you out of your minds?" I shook my head with a smile. The tribulation clouds gathered, rolling majestically toward Kian. The elder sister lay panting heavily on the ground, covered in wounds. Seeing the scene, she grew excited. "Serves you right for being so arrogant. With such massive tribulation clouds, Kian is surely doomed." She looked at me with malice in her eyes. "Little sister, I'll collect your corpse for you." By now, no one was paying attention to her anymore. Everyone was watching Kian with concern. Though I knew Kian would be fine, he still had the protective charm I gave him, but watching the tribulation lightning strike down one after another, I still felt fear in my heart. I don't know how long it took, but the tribulation clouds finally dispersed, yet Kian's figure was nowhere to be seen. My sister jumped up, laughing wildly at the sky. "Little sister, you're doomed. You can accompany Kian to the underworld and be a pair of wild lovebirds, free." She looked at me, seeing that I was unharmed and unaffected, and she froze in shock. Seeing my sister's incredulous expression, I smiled and explained, "I didn't form a bond with Kian, so naturally I'm fine." My sister grabbed a nearby dragon clansman and said, "She's afraid of death, unwilling to form a bond with Kian. She doesn't deserve to be your young madam." The dragon clansman shook off her hand and said disdainfully, "You humans are so scheming, trying to drive a wedge between us and our young madam. The dragon clan protects their own. After I married in, they considered me part of the family. These days I've been busy running around for Kian, and I firmly chose the dragon clan." When my sister spoke recklessly, "They cherish me even more now." Watching my sister look as if the sky had fallen, I said with a smile, "Sister, it's not that I'm unwilling to form a pact with Kian, but rather that if I do, I'll only hold him back." The elder sister staggered back a few steps, her face turning pale instantly. At that moment, Kian appeared, looking coldly at the elder sister. "Throw Luna and that mermaid out, disturbing people's minds during my tribulation and speaking insolently to my wife. Such people are unworthy of staying in our dragon clan." Just like that, Jules and the elder sister were thrown out of the dragon clan in complete bewilderment. Before being thrown out, the elder sister still shouted, "Just you wait, when my husband becomes royalty, you'll all be kneeling and begging us." Few people know that the sea god from my past life had his eyes on me, but since I wasn't of the sea folk, he had to settle for passing his legacy to Jules instead. Kian was still furious. He said to me, "Why don't we go visit the mermaid clan too? After all, she's your sister. We should go show our support as her family." I was still worrying about how to bring Kian to the deep sea when his idea came like a timely rain. But looking at Kian's mischievous grin, I couldn't help but laugh. "Since when did you pick up humans' roundabout ways?" Kian took out the amulet I gave him, looking at me affectionately. "You are my wife. Of course I will protect you." We exchanged a knowing smile. My sister and Jules were in the middle of an argument. By now, Jules had shed his disguise, glaring at my sister with a ferocious expression. The elder sister was spoiled by our father and can't see the current situation clearly. She was still scolding Jules. "Why didn't you fight back? Don't you know their actions are making me lose face?" Jules snorted coldly and said, "Who told you to have such a loose tongue?" They started arguing, and in a fit of rage, Jules slapped the elder sister hard. The elder sister covered her face, looking at Jules in disbelief. Then the sister saw me and Kian, glaring at us viciously. "What are you doing here? You're not welcome." Jules held her back, smiling apologetically at us. The sister widened her eyes, staring at the apologetic Jules. Standing before Jules, I recalled how ferociously he had glared at me in my past life. The person who once terrified me now wore a look of humility, and suddenly, I realized I wasn't so afraid anymore, no matter how reluctant my sister was. Jules still invited us back to the mermaid clan, treating us with lavish hospitality. The mermaid clan's territory lies in the deep sea, where resources are scarce. Seeing this scene, my sister's face turned dark with anger. She had been pampered since childhood, and even when confined to the Buddhist hall in her previous life, her father still provided her with the finest food and comforts. It could be said that she had never suffered such humiliation before, not to mention, with Kian's arrival. The mermaids would always give us priority for any good things they had. This is far from the queenly dream my sister had. Kian and I eat well, drink well, and travel occasionally. Kian was astonished. "With your talents, why?" Kian didn't finish his sentence, but I understood what he meant. I said, "My sister has always been competitive since childhood, and I'm not our father's favorite. If I outperform her, she'll be upset." Kian held my hand sympathetically, about to say something. Then we saw my furious sister glaring at us from nearby. She rushed forward and knocked our hands apart. She looked at Kian with resentment, as if he were a heartless scoundrel. "How could you do this?" Kian scratched his head in confusion and said, "What's going on with us?" With reddened eyes, the elder sister resentfully said to Kian, "How could you do this to me?" Kian was completely baffled by his sister. "Who even are you, sis? How have I wronged you?" The sister put on a pitiful look that left Kian utterly perplexed, then grabbed me and walked away. While walking, he asked me, "Is your sister a bit off in the head?" Out of nowhere, she acts like I've done something to wrong her, but I haven't. I laughed while comforting him, my gaze briefly sweeping over my sister. My sister's face turned bright red as she glared at me fiercely. In my past life, apart from the day of the suitor selection, I never saw Kian again. Kian gave me the impression of being noble and majestic, so I simply couldn't associate the man grinning mischievously before me with Kian. Kian held a chicken leg, eating with elegant manners, only the words coming from his mouth weren't so pleasant. Mira, from now on stay away from your sister and father, lest you become like them. If it were my sister, she would take it seriously and think he was looking down on people. But I was different, I nodded with a smile. Kian and I lived very happily among the mermaids, and Kian was so delighted that he forgot all about home. With no elders watching over us, Kian took me to explore all the forbidden places of the mermaid clan, leaving them furious but unable to speak out. While we were having fun, my sister began to feel miserable. Jules appears gentle and simple-minded to outsiders, but only after interacting with their mermaid clan does one discover that mermaids are inherently cruel. Finding pleasure in tormenting others, they often abduct lone human women, subjecting them to arbitrary beatings and abuse. In this lifetime, with me and Kian present, Jules didn't dare to act too recklessly, only giving my sister a few light blows, but when he realized my sister wasn't reporting to me and was instead hiding it, his attacks became even more vicious. Kian and I are visiting the mermaids' market. Their market is quite similar to human ones, with everything being deep-sea jewelry. 5. Seeing that I liked them, Kian bought everything. As Kian and I strolled through the market, we spotted my sister and Jules standing not far away. Jules wore a dark expression, while her sister looked somewhat listless, gazing at Jules with a somewhat ingratiating look. Upon seeing us, Jules approached with her sister to greet us. The moment her sister saw us, she immediately became haughty, curling her lips in disdain. Some people really mistake fish eyes for pearls, young Master Long. Don't say I didn't warn you, my sister can't bear your children. Kian's face turned cold the moment he heard these words. Seeing this, the elder sister felt a secret delight. Kian said, Mira has formed a covenant with me, she shares my immortality, and our descendants will have their own fate. There's no need for the young lady to trouble herself. Moreover, Mira's aptitude is exceptional. Fortunately, it was me who married Mira, otherwise. Kian's tone was meaningful as he left the sentence unfinished, and Jules's face grew even darker. The sister was furious. She tried to grab Kian's hand, but Kian shook her off. The sister cried out in pain as the scars on her arm were accidentally revealed. Kian was shocked. I didn't use any force. Are you trying to scam me? Seeing this scene, Jules grew nervous. He opened his mouth as if to say something. My sister viciously smoothed her sleeves and glared at me. You little wretch. What did you say to young Master Long? I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. I had originally intended to pressure Jules a bit to prevent him from harming my sister. Seeing my sister like this, there was no need to say anything more. Everyone has their own fate. After all, this is what my sister owes me. After the unpleasant parting with my sister at the market, I rarely saw her. Every time I saw her, she was bruised and battered. She never approached to speak with me. Just glared at me fiercely for a moment before turning away. On this day, I had just woken up when the maid told me my sister wanted to see me. After some thought, I decided to go meet my sister. There were more scars on my sister's face. She looked exhausted, with a large bruise on her cheekbone that was quite frightening. When she saw me, my sister gave a bitter smile and said, You see, Jules is practically inhuman. He beats me half to death day and night, then barely keeps me alive. I let out a dry "oh." Seeing my indifference, tears fell from my sister's eyes as she said, Mira, I'm suffering in your place. Don't you realize that if I hadn't exchanged marriages with you back then, you'd be the one enduring this torment now? Hearing this, I laughed and thanked my sister very sincerely. Seeing my sister's ugly expression, I felt an inexplicable sense of satisfaction. During this time interacting with Kian, I've also learned some of Kian's provoking tactics. My sister's face twisted slightly, but she quickly composed herself. Pushing the food box towards me, she said eagerly, Little sister, I remember you like this. I prepared it especially for you. Try it. I opened it and saw a few osmanthus cakes lying inside. Seeing the osmanthus cakes reminded me of my childhood when my wet nurse made some for me. She told me these were my mother's favorite. But before I could eat those osmanthus cakes, my elder sister had people tie up my wet nurse, accusing her of theft. I never saw my wet nurse again. Coming to my senses, I picked up a piece of osmanthus cake, under my sister's delighted gaze, and stuffed the pastry into my sister's mouth. My sister was shocked, quickly spat out the cake, and collapsed onto the table retching in fright. Only after she had cleared the pastry from her mouth did she glare at me with lingering fear. I kindly prepared pastries for you, and this is how you treat me. What an ungrateful wretch, I calmly said. There's something wrong with the pastries, they're poisoned, aren't they? My sister's expression changed abruptly. She snatched the food box back and angrily retorted, You're framing me. Who would bother poisoning you for no reason? My sister stood up in a rage. Fine, don't eat them then. Once my husband becomes royalty, I'll be the empress. You won't get off easy then. As she spoke, she walked out and bumped into Kian, who suddenly appeared. Seeing Kian, the elder sister's eyes reddened. She said sadly to Kian, "I don't know why, but my sister misunderstands me so much. We were so close when we were little." Listening to my sister's distorted version of events, I couldn't help but laugh. Kian was completely confused by what he heard, and he sent the pitifully crying elder sister away. After my sister left, I told Kian about how she tried to poison me. Kian was shocked and immediately cupped my face to check if I was okay. I said, "I'm fine," but she made me angry. Kian quickly hugged me and said, "Should I go beat her up to make you feel better?" Thinking of the sea god's opportunity, I said to Kian, "Don't hit women. I know how to teach her a lesson." In this reincarnated life, my sister married Jules for no other reason than Jules obtaining the inheritance. She wanted to become the queen in this reincarnated life. My sister has repeatedly provoked me and even attempted to poison me again. 6. Well then, I'll make sure my sister witnesses her beautiful dream shatter before her eyes. To fulfill her dream of becoming queen, my sister endured Jules' brutal beatings without complaint, but she soon realized Jules was utterly hopeless, completely lacking ambition, and she couldn't fathom how Jules had obtained the inheritance. She shamelessly clung to me, annoying Kian so much he nearly punched her. Kian restrained himself from hitting her, but he couldn't stop himself from throwing her out of the house. He let out a sigh of relief and said to me, "Your sister has finally left. Let's clean up and hurry to claim the sea god's inheritance. I can't stand this damned place any longer." Kian looked resentful, so I quickly reassured him, "The sea god's inheritance is about to emerge. I'll take you to claim it. And then we'll return to the dragon clan." Faint footsteps sounded outside the house. After they faded away, Kian and I exchanged glances. Kian burst into silent laughter, and seeing him so delighted, I couldn't help but smile as well. Kian and I left the mermaid tribe, diving deeper into the ocean. Just as expected, two little tails were following behind us. Soon we arrived at the burial ground of the sea god. In my past life, I tried to escape when Jules wasn't looking, but he caught me. In my panic, I stumbled into the sea god's burial ground, disturbing his consciousness. Seeing my pitiful state, the sea god took pity on me, but since I couldn't accept his legacy, he had to entrust it to Jules instead, making him swear to cherish me in this lifetime. I had promised the sea god in my past life that I would properly bury his remains, but in the end, I broke that promise. The sea god's burial ground was desolate beyond words. Remembering his kind face, my heart ached with pain. Through tear-blurred eyes, the sea god appeared. His phantom image towering like a colossal mountain, unleashing an oppressive aura upon us. I realized I remained unaffected, but Kian beside me was drenched in cold sweat, gritting his teeth to endure. Soon, the sea god withdrew the oppressive aura and said, "There are two more little ones behind." Kian and I turned to look. My sister and Jules were sprawled on the ground in disarray. Their limbs were too weak to stand, forcing them to crawl toward us. Seeing this scene, a trace of disgust quickly flashed in the sea god's eyes. The elder sister regained some strength and forcefully pulled Jules up, her eyes shining brightly as she looked at the sea god. "Sea god, I've brought your successor. Quickly pass on your legacy to him." The sea god snorted coldly, "You're making my ears hurt with your shouting. I just found it ridiculous." The elder sister's face was pale, with blood seeping from the corner of her mouth. Jules bowed respectfully to the sea god. Mermaid Jules pays homage to the sea god. Jules spoke quite eloquently, pleasing the sea god, while my sister looked at me triumphantly from the side. After exchanging a few words with him, the sea god turned his gaze to me and said gently, "Long time no see. I've been waiting for you for a long time." 7. Hearing these words, my tears fell. I finally understood why I was able to be reborn. It was because the sea god burned his own divine soul to give me this chance at rebirth. He worried that after my rebirth, I would still have to marry Jules, so he made my sister reincarnate as well. He knew that after my sister's rebirth, she would surely rush to marry Jules. I've figured it all out now. Gazing at the sea god's benevolent face, I knelt on the ground and wept uncontrollably, pouring out all the grievances from my past life. Kian also knelt down with me, carefully holding me in his arms. The sea god smiled with satisfaction. "You are the successor I've chosen. But it's a pity you're a human." I quickly responded, "Thank you for your favor, sea god. My husband is of the dragon race. If you find him suitable, you can pass the inheritance to him." Sensing something amiss, my sister screamed, "How could she possibly be your chosen successor? Your successor should be Jules. She's just a lowly wretch." The sea god waved his hand in displeasure, and with that motion, my sister was sent flying. Jules dropped to the ground in fear. Not wanting to draw the sea god's attention, the sea god didn't spare him a glance, only looking at me and saying, "But it's fortunate that you formed a bond with this dragon lad, carrying a wisp of dragon aura, that makes you one of the sea folk now, so I shall pass the legacy to you." The sea god then turned his gaze to Kian. Do you have any objections? Kian said respectfully, this junior wouldn't dare, nor would I have any dissatisfaction. Mira is my wife, and we share both honor and disgrace. The sea god nodded in satisfaction. I soared into the air and, under my sister's desperate gaze, accepted the sea god's inheritance. After bestowing the inheritance upon me, the sea god dissipated with a reluctant look in his eyes. Kian and I gathered the sea god's remains and prepared to leave. My sister blocked us, glaring at me with malice. Dragon Yin Master, are you willing to be dominated by such a woman? Kian didn't take his sister's provocation seriously. He said nonchalantly, just thinking about it gets me excited. I'm the first dragon to live off my wife. They must envy me for finding such a wonderful partner. As my sister tried to speak again, Jules directly slapped her and scolded, you bitch. This is all your fault. It was only then that I realized my sister had already formed a pact with Jules. Jules' cultivation was being transferred to her, causing his overall abilities to decline significantly. I didn't bother watching their dog-eat-dog fight any longer and left with Kian. The sea god's remains in my arms felt warm, and as I thought of the sea god, waves of pain surged through my heart. When Kian and I left, we took those human women with us. Those mermaids were unwilling. But Kian beat them into submission, forcing them to let the women go. I originally intended to send these poor women back to the human realm, but they said humanity would no longer accept them. Seeing their miserable state filled my heart with heaviness. Kian doesn't understand how difficult life is for women in this world. In my past life, when I was suffering, they would still slip me a bite to eat. Just for that one bite of food, I couldn't bring myself to abandon them. Seeing my hesitation, Kian said, what's so difficult? The dragon realm is vast enough, can't it accommodate them? While we were talking, Jules led a troop of soldiers to block our path. Jules said, young dragon master, I don't wish to make things difficult for you or damage the friendship between our clans, just leave them here, and I'll let you go. The women turned pale at the sight of this massive black army, but what surprised me was, they all declared they were willing to stay. As long as Kian and I were allowed to leave. 8. The elder sister stood by with an arrogant expression. This isn't you negotiating with me, I'm giving you orders. The scene reached a deadlock. Kian suddenly laughed, shaking his hair, a few small fries daring to act wild in front of me. Jules' expression changed as he said, you're refusing a toast only to drink a forfeit. The other side had superior numbers. And just as I was sweating for Kian, desperately trying to think of a countermeasure, Kian had already given them a thorough beating, pinning Jules to the ground and landing punch after punch. Who said we're on friendly terms with you mermaids? We're the Dragon Clan, you're just a bunch of worthless fish. As we were preparing to leave, my sister suddenly appeared out of nowhere and hesitantly called out to Kian. She weakly tried to collapse into Kian's arms, but he quickly dodged aside, shouting in alarm, big sis, why do you always try to frame me like this, no matter what? I'm your brother-in-law. My sister's expression darkened as she gritted her teeth and said, you're not my brother-in-law, you should be my husband. When these words were spoken, everyone was shocked, except for me. Watching Kian's disgusted expression, the sister's beautiful eyes welled up with tears as she covered her face and sobbed. Kian, do you believe in past lives? In our previous life, you were undergoing a tribulation, and because of you, I nearly lost my life when the tribulation failed. Given a second chance at life, I didn't know how to face you, so I married Jules instead, but I truly love you. Kian quickly interrupted her. Stop, I feel sick, I don't deserve this kind of punishment. My sister spilled all the details about our past lives, even embellishing her own image a bit. As for me, I became that vicious woman who hunted her down relentlessly in our past life and stole her love in this one. Kian felt his brain couldn't keep up, saying, so you mean my failed tribulation in the past life was entirely because you formed a contract with me? My sister choked up, while Kian suddenly grew furious. Idiot, look at your own aptitude. If you hadn't formed that contract with me, my cultivation wouldn't have regressed. Thank heavens I married Mira in this life, or you'd have gotten me killed again. My sister's face turned pale and ashen as she pleaded, I know I was wrong. Take me away with you. Jules is a complete madman. His wife should be Mira. I glanced at Kian, who grew even angrier. He shoved my sister violently and said, Mira and I are already bound by oath, and you call Mira vicious. You're the wicked one. Mira never sought to harm you. Unlike you. My sister let out a shriek, drew a dagger, and lunged at me. Kian reacted swiftly, pulling me aside and kicking my sister away. Though I believe men shouldn't hit women, looking at my sister's behavior, I suddenly felt she wasn't hit hard enough. My sister wanted to keep arguing, but Jules dragged her away. After returning to the Dragon Clan, the members learned I had inherited the Sea God's legacy. I originally thought they would be jealous. They were indeed jealous, but I wasn't the object of their envy. After I received the inheritance, the Dragon King passed the throne to Kian. He originally intended to give it to me, but the ancestral rules of the Dragon Clan prevented him from doing so. The members of the Dragon Clan envied Kian for enjoying an easy life at such a young age. More than once, I overheard their discussions, filled with admiration for Kian. Kian is living a carefree life now. He doesn't have to get up early to train, nor is he constantly supervised by elders, eating and drinking well every day. He's gained a noticeable amount of weight. I was worried his self-esteem might be hurt, but he didn't care at all, in fact. He even joined the elders in supervising my training. Years passed by, and on the day I became pregnant with dragon offspring, celebrations erupted across the 4 seas. I saw Jules and my sister. My sister had aged considerably, shrinking timidly behind Jules while gazing around with envious eyes. Her face was covered with gruesome wounds, and her clothes were tattered, but she paid no mind, devouring her food with such haste that she even shoved it directly into her mouth with her hands. Her fingernails were caked with dirt, disgusting the other guests at the table so much that I had to seat her alone. Seeing my once proud sister reduced to this state brought me no joy, and the hatred from my past life had long since faded. Jules called me over, signaling he wanted to speak with me privately. Jules and I stepped aside, his eyes filled with complex emotions. After hesitating for a long time, he finally spoke. I don't believe what Luna said, but since that day, I've been having dreams. I dreamed I married you but treated you poorly, even coldly watching as Luna poisoned you. I looked calmly at Jules, who had aged considerably and was no longer the demon from my past life. I said indifferently, "What are you trying to express by telling me all this?" Jules looked at me urgently. "I just want to ask, is what Luna said true?" 9. I glanced at Luna, who was wolfing down her food, her face a mix of tears and laughter, while passers-by avoided her like the plague. I said coldly, "Does it really matter if it's true or not? What matters is that in this lifetime, you'll always have to look up to me, so be nicer to my sister." Humans have a saying, even when beating a dog, one must consider its master. Jules let out a sigh and left. I never saw Jules or my sister again. But thinking about it, the mermaid tribe's dwelling is remote, deep in the ocean, making the journey quite strenuous. But news of Jules' tribulation still reached my ears. Jules failed his tribulation, and his bonded sister was also affected. In this life, their father still refused to give up on her, but the mermaid tribe was too remote. By the time their father arrived, the sister had already become mentally impaired. She and her father returned to the human realm, seeing her impaired state. Her father couldn't bear to leave her alone, so he resigned as clan leader to devote himself to caring for his sister. At this point, Kian cautiously observed my expression. "Mira, you're not upset, are you?" I shook my head. I might have been upset before, but not anymore. If it were before, I would indeed have been sad. Since childhood, my father has always favored my elder sister. I used to think that if I were outstanding enough, my father would share even a little bit of that love with me, but I realized that no matter how outstanding I was, I still had to take second place to my sister, and my father's eyes would never turn to me. My sister's fate in both her past and present life wasn't particularly good, yet she was always the one my father firmly chose and protected. I looked at Kian and couldn't help but hug him. Then, an angry child's voice came from the doorway. "Father, you're hugging Mother again, I'll fight you." The big one and the small one soon tumbled together. Sunlight fell upon us as I silently murmured, "See God, Mother, wet nurse. In this lifetime I too have someone who firmly chose me, actually not just one, but many people." 18. See God. The sea god still remembers the first time he saw Mira. She was being chased by that fish from the mermaid tribe, fleeing in panic until she stumbled into his burial ground. Back then, Mira was covered in wounds, utterly disheveled. Her eyes were dark yet bright. When she spotted Jules searching frantically for her, despair flashed in Myra's gaze, but soon, she drew a dagger, and a fire ignited in her eyes. Such is humanity, unyielding and resilient. He was drawn to Mira, and the sea god even felt some regret. This girl wasn't of the sea folk. If she were, what heights could the sea folk reach under her leadership? Seeing Myra's pitiful state, the sea god's long-dormant compassion stirred slightly. Besides, he was about to fade away, gazing at Mira. He forced Jules to make a vow. A wisp of his divine soul attached itself to Mira, watching as she accompanied Jules in leading the sea folk. Mira is an outstanding person, the sea god thought with satisfaction. 10. But an accident still befell Mira, as Jules bewitched Myra's sister to poison her. Watching Mira die in agony, the sea god felt a pang of sorrow in his heart, so he burned his divine soul to reverse time. When he saw Mira again, she was no longer the pitiful girl from before, dressed in luxurious garments, rosy-cheeked, and appearing utterly healthy. A dragon whelp followed by her side. This dragon was very protective of Mira. To his surprise, he discovered that Mira actually carried a trace of dragon aura, meaning she could receive the inheritance. This was the best news possible. Story 2. The tightly closed door separated the inside from the outside, and at the same time, it cut off my life. My wife and mother-in-law tricked me outside the door in order to save a little food. I could only watch helplessly as the horde of corpses surrounded me and tore me apart. I woke up with a start on the cold floor, and cold sweat soaked through my back. The ferocious and terrifying zombies were still biting in front of me, and the foul smell lingered. What are you making such a fuss about? If you're not used to sleeping on the floor, get out and sleep somewhere else. Don't even think about getting into my bed until you bring back the demolition compensation money. I really don't know why I was so blind to choose you in the first place. My best friend's husband already drives a big G. Look at you, you're a complete loser. Amidst the incessant complaining, my eyes gradually refocused in a hazy state. I picked up my phone and glanced at the time. It was September 11th. Was it a dream, or was I reborn? Was this a week before the zombie outbreak? I turned to look at Eleanor, who was lying on the bed and smiling happily while staring at the phone screen, and tentatively asked, "Are you chatting with Kevin?" Eleanor's hand that was replying to the message froze in midair, and a trace of panic clearly flashed in her eyes. Kevin was Eleanor's ex-boyfriend. She didn't tell me the specific reason for their breakup, and because I trusted her, I didn't ask either. One day after the zombie outbreak, I accidentally discovered that the two of them had been in constant contact. The content of their chat was disgustingly obscene. "Who's Kevin? Do you not trust me?" Looking at Eleanor's attempts to cover up and her blustering appearance, I already had the answer in my heart. I was reborn a week before the outbreak of the zombie virus. In my previous life, I collected supplies for her and her mother in the apocalypse, struggling to survive and hovering on the brink of death time and time again, but I never expected that the final outcome would be ridiculously tragic. I laughed self-deprecatingly. Without saying another word, I got up and walked over to the bookshelf. I picked up the divorce agreement that she often used to threaten me, took a pen, and signed my name. "Get out of here with your mother tomorrow." I threw the divorce agreement on the floor, and my voice was extremely cold. Eleanor looked at the words on the divorce agreement, her eyes full of disbelief. "Joseph, what do you mean?" "It means exactly what you see. Don't you want a divorce every now and then?" "Fine, I agree. Don't even think about my house, and you won't get a single penny of the demolition compensation money from my parents either." Before I died, I finally saw her true colors, but the price was my life. But God gave me another chance, and this time I won't tolerate it anymore. Trying to influence her with love, bullshit. It's better to bring back a zombie from outside and keep it. At least it'll be quiet. My mother-in-law, who heard the argument, came out of the bedroom. Seeing the situation, she didn't care about anything and pointed at my nose and started scolding. "You ungrateful wretch. My daughter has been with you for so many years. How could you have the heart to make her cry?" I slapped her hand away and sneered. "Yes, you've gotten used to eating and living off me, and you even boss me around. I have to get up an hour earlier for work to make you breakfast, and when I come home from work, I'm as tired as a dead dog, but I still have to make you dinner. You don't treat me like a human being, but I treated you like treasures. I must have been out of my mind. Pack your bags and get out tomorrow." I ignored their crying and cursing in the room, put on my clothes, and walked out of the house. There was still a week left before the zombie virus outbreak, and this was the only time I had left. First, I called my parents and told them not to sign the contract with the developer these days and to wait until I got back. My parents, who were originally a bit hesitant, immediately agreed when they heard that I was coming back, and their voices were full of joy. In my previous life, my parents died on their way to find me because they signed the contract early and moved. After hanging up the phone, I found a second-hand house agency and listed my house for sale at a very attractive price. As soon as the agency owner heard the price I offered, he directly proposed to prepay the money to secure the property. I understood what he meant. He just thought the price was low and wanted to make more profit for himself. I agreed. I quickly signed the contract. The owner happily transferred the money to me and generously gave me 3 days to vacate the house. The 600,000 yuan in my mobile banking account was the first startup fund for me to enter the apocalypse. Over the years, while working as a salesman, I got to know many wholesale merchants. When they heard that I was buying for myself, they not only gave me a discount but also promised to deliver the things I wanted to the old house in the suburbs the next day. When I got home, it was already dawn. The mother and daughter were sitting on the sofa, clearly wanting to talk to me. "Too bad, Joseph. As long as you admit your mistake, I'll pretend that yesterday never happened, and I won't contact Kevin again in the future," Eleanor said with a cold face, her arms crossed in front of her chest. My mother-in-law chimed in beside her. "Joseph, my daughter has already signed the divorce agreement. As long as you admit your mistake, I'll tear it up right in front of you." I almost laughed out of anger. These two people actually took my tolerance as a reason to push their luck. If we got divorced, they might regret it, but what they would regret was losing a laborer they could boss around at will. When they saw me approaching, there was an obvious look of joy on their faces, thinking that I would apologize and beg for forgiveness as I used to, but when I put the divorce agreement in my bag, their eyes were filled with shock. The real estate agent will come to sort out the house in 2 days. It's over between us, and we'll never see each other again. I threw the keys on the coffee table and walked out under their stunned gazes. 3. I got in the car and started the engine. At this moment, I finally understood that saying, a man truly belongs to himself only during those few minutes of silence in his own parking lot, but my shackles have been removed, and the rest of my life will belong to me. I went on a crazy shopping spree in the supermarket, buying rice, oil, noodles, and cabbages and potatoes that were easy to store until the car couldn't hold any more. Although I had ordered some, these things were more precious than gold in the apocalypse, so the more the better. It took me 3 hours to drive back home. From a distance, I saw my parents waiting at the intersection. When they saw my car, they waved frequently. I felt a sudden sourness in my nose, and my heart was filled with guilt. After getting married for 5 years, my parents had never even been to the city. I had been taking care of those two ungrateful people, and I rarely had time to come back. My father's temples were white with frost, and his body was hunched. My mother's face was also full of wrinkles. When I hugged my parents, I felt a sense of security that I had never felt before. "Why didn't your wife come back with you?" in response to my mother's question. I casually made up a lie to fob her off. As I approached my house, I was shocked by the scene in front of me. The houses of the surrounding neighbors had been flattened, and there were building materials of various sizes placed around. It was obvious that if we didn't move, they would surround our house. Wasn't it a coincidence? Wasn't this just a coincidence? My dad helped me carry the things down from the car one by one. While carrying them, he mumbled, "We're moving in a couple of days. Why are you still buying all these things? Save your money. When you have children in the future, there will be a lot of places where you need to spend money." In the evening, there were 6 dishes and 1 soup on the table. I had some wine with my dad and chatted about the trivial matters of life. Beep, beep, beep. The sound of a truck honking came from the door, along with the driver's undisguised complaint. "This twisty and turny place is really hard to find. If it weren't for the navigation, I would definitely get lost." I smiled secretly. This was exactly the effect I wanted. Even the living couldn't find this place, let alone the dead. The unloading workers lifted the rain cover, revealing the crucial thing: solar panels. For a large truckload of solar panels, along with the power supply facilities, cost a total of 100,000 yuan. This kind of monocrystalline silicon solar panel has a lifespan of up to 25 years and can meet the electricity needs of our family's future life. I was originally worried that placing them in the yard would affect the land for planting, but now these building materials perfectly solved the problem I was worried about. It couldn't be better to install these solar panels on the stone slabs and wooden planks that were stacked several meters high. After all the installations were completed, I paid the remaining balance under the driver's puzzled gaze. "Installing panels in this place? I really don't know what you're thinking." I ignored his question and continued to contact the trucks that would deliver the food later. With the apocalypse approaching, I couldn't take care of everyone. I could only use everything I had to ensure the safety of my family. My parents were dumbfounded as they looked at the truck full of supplies. There was an endless supply of rice, noodles, and oil, and all kinds of seasonings were available. The largest quantity was canned food, spam, beef. There were also compressed dry rations. As for water, it wasn't necessary because there was a well in the house, a deep well with natural filtration. "Joseph, what are you doing?" my mom asked in surprise. "Let's move the things first. I'll tell you later." I smiled at her. The 3 of us spent the whole afternoon moving the supplies. In the evening, my dad sent my mom away. "Tell me." He rolled a hand-rolled cigarette on his own. The red hand-rolled cigarette flickered on and off, and thick smoke rose up. I told him the truth without missing a single word. After listening, he didn't show much change, but just let out a heavy sigh. "This day has finally come." I looked at him in surprise. "The ancestors said that if a person has no virtue, disaster will surely come. Look at people nowadays." My dad shook his head, took a puff of the cigarette, and then said, "What are you going to do?" "I want to bring Mark over here," I said. Mark was not only my dad's fellow villager but also his comrade in arms. The 2 of them had a life-and-death friendship. His son, Leo, and I grew up together since we were little kids. During the time I was away, Leo had been taking care of my parents. With the apocalypse approaching, I couldn't just stand by and watch Mark's family suffer. My dad patted my shoulder with satisfaction after hearing this. 5. Early the next morning, I called Leo and told him that I was at the old house and asked his family to come over for a gathering. Leo naturally agreed readily. Before noon, he came with Mark and Natalie. Although we hadn't seen each other for a while, our friendship hadn't faded. This guy came up and gave me a big hug. "You still remember to come back." "I'm back now, aren't I?" "I'm not leaving," I smiled. "Aren't you reluctant to part with your beautiful wife and luxurious house in the city? Besides, the construction here is about to start. Why don't you ask Uncle to buy a house in my community too?" Leo suggested. "We'll talk about that later. You're just in time to help me with something these days. Also, let Mark stay here for a few days so that the two old buddies can catch up." Leo slapped his chest and said it was no problem. When he walked into the yard, he was stunned by the scene in front of him and exclaimed in surprise. I pulled Leo down to the cellar. This guy was once again shocked by the cellar that was filled to the brim. After dinner, I went outside the yard to the place where the building materials were placed and started studying the thick iron plates stacked there. Leo squatted on the wall and looked at me. "Joseph, I heard from Uncle that you brought these back. What on earth are you going to do?" "I'm joking, but what if I said the end of the world is coming? Zombies are about to arrive," I said half jokingly. He laughed heartily. "Why don't you say it's rabies? I actually saw a video of a rabies-infected person biting someone on Douyin today." Rabies. I was suddenly stunned, and a storm of thoughts surged in my mind. A few days before the zombie outbreak, I did come across some videos about rabies, but I thought the streamers were just showing off, so I didn't pay attention. Now, hearing Leo mention it, I suddenly woke up. The zombie virus didn't break out a few days later. It had already been lurking among the people, and it would break out in full force on the last day, which was why the whole city fell overnight. I quickly took out my phone and searched for videos related to rabies. I was shocked when I searched. There were more than a dozen such incidents that happened just today. The most terrifying thing was that they weren't concentrated in a certain city but were distributed in various regions. This wasn't rabies at all. These were the initially infected people. The time left for us was far less than we had imagined. I immediately made a call and rented a crane, asking them to deliver it outside the village the next day. The next morning, I picked up the crane. As soon as I drove into the alley of my house, I heard my phone ring. I took it out and saw that it was my ungrateful ex-wife. I hung up. It rang again. I hung up again. After several consecutive calls and feeling extremely annoyed, I finally pressed the answer button. "Joseph, you son of a bitch. Why didn't you tell me that you sold the house? Where do you expect me and my mom to live? The real estate agent is here now. You'd better come back right away. What does it have to do with you that I sold my house? Don't call me if you have nothing to say. I have nothing to do with you anymore." "Oh, I'm wrong. There is a little bit of a relationship. You're my ex-wife," I retorted, feeling extremely comfortable at the same time. "Joseph, I was blind to fall for you in the first place. You got it the wrong way around." This sentence is more suitable for me. I crossed my legs and leaned back in the driver's seat. It was a pity that I didn't know how to smoke. Otherwise, lighting a cigarette would have made it even more enjoyable. "You sold the house. What are me and my mom supposed to do? How can you be so shameless?" "Speaking of shamelessness, who can compare to you and your mother? I earned money to support the family, and you two spent it recklessly. When we couldn't save any money, you said I wasn't working hard enough. I've been a big fool for 5 years, and now I'm not going to put up with it anymore. You two parasites with useless hands and legs should first think about how to survive." After hanging up the phone, I could already imagine her furious expression on the other end. Haha, this feels so good. 6. The iron plate, which weighed more than a ton, was leaning steadily against the building materials. It was almost impossible to move it, and besides, we had dug a deep trench underneath and backfilled it to make the iron plate even more stable. "Joseph, look, there are more and more videos like this today." Leo handed me his phone, and on the short video, there was a bloody scene playing. A rabies-infected uncle bit a young woman until she was covered in blood and flesh. He was finally subdued by the police who arrived. I paused the video and slowly adjusted it to the final scene of the arrest. That's right, it was these eyes. The man's eyes had completely changed. The position of the original pupils had shrunk to a tiny point, and the entire eyeball was completely occupied by the white part. "It has already started," I sighed softly. When Leo saw the pause screen, his ferocious face was covered with bloodstains, and those eyes were no longer human eyes. He couldn't help but start to believe a little. "Joseph, what should we do? Although the fence has been built, we don't have any weapons to protect ourselves at hand. We'll go into the city tomorrow." Okay. Lying in bed at night, I was calculating in my heart. Before being reborn, I had an experience of living in the apocalypse and knew some habits of zombies. Their eyes have become useless, but their sense of smell and hearing are extremely sharp. Any strange sound will make them launch a crazy attack. These experiences bought with lives are my greatest asset. I have already spent 300,000 yuan out of the 600,000 yuan in my hand, and I need to use the remaining money to buy some seeds and defensive weapons. I will choose some seeds that are easy to preserve and have strong reproductive ability to buy. Because this is a one-time purchase and there won't be another chance. For defensive weapons, a compound bow must be chosen. This kind of weapon is a powerful killing tool in the apocalypse. Before dawn the next day, Leo and I drove into the city. On the way, the sight of police cars lined up and soldiers armed to the teeth confirmed my guess. Leo's expression became much graver. "Joseph, thank you." I patted him on the shoulder and didn't say much. It's not the farming season now, so the seed business is sluggish. When I handed the purchase list to the shopkeeper, he was full of shock in his eyes. "Do you need so many? If you don't have them, I'll go and ask the next store." Yes, you have the goods and I have the money. It's a mutual need, and we didn't even bargain on the price. He's incredibly rich and heartless. The goods owner gave us a thumbs-up gesture towards our car. Our next stop was directly at the compound bow specialty store. After choosing a few bows that felt right in our hands, we bought all the carbon arrows in the store. We still paid the money readily and were just about to move all the carbon arrows onto the car. Bang! The sudden sound of impact startled everyone in the store. A man with his limbs crawling on the ground and his body twisted into a strange shape was subdued by several fully armed people. Through the window, we could see the drool dripping from the corner of his mouth and his strange eyes. Sigh. I don't know what's going on recently. There's an outbreak of rabies. A boy in the community where I live was bitten, and I don't know how he is now. Hearing the shopkeeper's muttering, I kindly reminded him, "Go and hide for a while and stock up on some food and water." After that, Leo and I carried the package things and got into the car. On the way back, it became more and more tense. There were not only fully armed police but also the army with transport trucks set up at the intersections for inspections. Several people wearing isolation suits held a bottle of reagent for us to smell. Seeing that the two of us had no reaction, they let us go. "Is that blood?" Leo looked at me. I had a solemn expression and nodded slightly. Zombies can smell the smell of blood, even from a long distance. They can follow the smell. Obviously, someone has already discovered this problem. But unfortunately, under a large-scale outbreak, it is simply impossible to effectively stop it. 7. In the following days, we kept strengthening the protection. We installed monitors at the high points of the village to monitor every road leading into the village. At the same time, we collected some common medicines from the pharmacies in the town to prevent any family members from getting sick in the future. At this time, the short video platform and the WeChat moments were already filled with the words rabies, and even the phenomenon of people cannibalizing people appeared. Just as soon as these videos were posted, they would be controlled and taken off the shelves, but some of them still leaked out. The leakage of the videos caused a wave of panic among some people. Supermarkets and department stores were frantically looted and emptied, not even leaving a single vegetable leaf. On September 18th, the zombie virus that couldn't be suppressed finally broke out. Tens of thousands of people fled outward, but more of them were blocked on the road and could only watch the arrival of death helplessly. The once bustling and noisy streets were in a state of devastation. The cars that had rear-ended one after another were scattered in all directions, blocking the streets. The hordes of zombies spread rapidly in all directions, pouncing on and biting the living people on the road. The corpses on the ground that were bitten to pieces suddenly twisted and struggled to stand up. Their grayish-white eyeballs rolled on their blood-covered heads, emitting ear-piercing roars. Their broken arms hung freely on both sides of their bodies, and they staggered into the army of zombies. Looking at the scenes played on the TV, the whole family had a solemn expression. On September 19th, the second day of the outbreak of the zombie virus, the army cleared the mutated zombies around the city and set up large-scale isolation nets. Helicopters flew over from time to time in the sky, and the TV and radio also broadcast frequently, telling people to stay at home and not go out. Humans still underestimated the power of the zombie virus. The construction workers were attacked by the hordes of zombies that night. Although the army eliminated a large number of zombies, in the end, due to running out of ammunition and food, they were overwhelmed by the tide of zombies. On September 20th, the third day of the outbreak of the zombie virus, some places in the city had already lost power due to line failures. Many survivors with insufficient food storage secretly went out to look for food. Without the experience of surviving in the apocalypse, most of them could only add to the number of the zombie horde. More people sent out distress signals through their mobile phones but received no response. The WeChat moments were filled with hesitation, sadness, and depression. No one knew what the future would be like. 8. On October 3rd, half a month after the outbreak of the zombie virus, the stored electricity in the city was exhausted, and the mobile phone signal also became intermittent. People seemed to have accepted the fact of the apocalypse. They no longer complained and tried to survive. The messages on the internet gradually decreased, and society began to regress. Dee. Just coming up from the cellar, I was covered in dust. Before I had time to wash, my mobile phone actually rang. I took it out and saw, that ungrateful person. Half a month had passed, and she didn't die in the tide of zombies. She had some ability. I pressed the answer button. What came into view was a dimly lit space. Through the hazy light, I could see that it was my ex-wife in front of me. Tsk. Look at you. Where did you go to escape the disaster? I thought you were living a very carefree life after selling the house. Why haven't you starved to death? You think I can't live without you. You think too highly of yourself. What do you think of Kevin? He's better than you. If I hadn't heard the news about your family's house being demolished back then, do you think I would have married you? Look at all this food behind me. It was all obtained by Kevin. Look at you. Even if you're not eaten by zombies, you'll starve to death. I had a calm expression. Is this the reason you called me? It's not over yet. Do you know why I never wanted a child? That's because I don't love you at all. I spent your money, supported other men, and had wild and promiscuous sex with different men every day. Do you know how wonderful that feeling is? You thought you won by driving me and my mother out. I'm telling you, that's a dream, now that you know the truth. Are you gnashing your teeth with hatred? Do you really want to kill me? My ex-wife suddenly turned around and hugged a man, and kissed him hard on the face. I recognized him. It was Kevin. I have food, a place to live, and men to sleep with now. I'm living a carefree and happy life. Seeing me like this, are you even more unhappy? The more unhappy you are, the happier I am. Crazy laughter came from the room, and the sound was harsh and unpleasant. No matter how much food there is, it will eventually run out if 3 people eat it. Maybe one person can last longer if they eat it alone. I smiled faintly at the 2 people on the video call. My meaningful words made the 2 of them stunned for a moment, and a strange look clearly flashed in Kevin's eyes. Don't try to sow discord. I've always loved Kevin. It hasn't changed in the past, and it won't change in the future. My ex-wife's expression was obviously a little flustered at this time, and she kept looking at Kevin, but a thought-provoking smile appeared on Kevin's lips. And he slowly stood up. What are you going to do? Help. The phone held horizontally suddenly dropped. The camera shook for a while, and several curses and screams were heard. Kevin, you bastard, let go of my daughter. This was the voice of my former mother-in-law. Slap. There was the sound of a heavy slap and someone falling down. I've supported you for half a month, and that's enough. You've been eating and drinking for free and not doing any work all day. If it wasn't for the fact that your daughter is somewhat good-looking, I would have turned against you long ago. Now I've had enough of your daughter. Keeping you 2 is a waste of food. No, there are zombies outside. We'll die if we go out. I'll do anything in the future. I'll clean this place up spotlessly. I'll do whatever you tell me to do. I'll also go out with you to find supplies. My ex-wife cried and pleaded. No need. I can live well by being thrifty. The sound of bottles and jars falling kept coming, and the cries and pleadings kept coming from the phone. The door was opened, and a ray of light shone in. The cries became more and more distant. The black figure returned, and the phone was also thrown out. 2 faces full of fear reappeared under the camera. Kevin is really good. He's much more ruthless than me. I laughed loudly. Joseph, I won't let you go even if I become a ghost. Don't become a ghost. First, learn to be a zombie. I don't have time to argue with you. I'm going to have hot pot. I hung up the phone and suddenly felt that the pent-up anger in my chest had all gone, and the negative emotions that had been accumulated for so long were completely swept away. Treat others the way they treat you. My appetite increased greatly, and I could still eat several big bowls. 9. On October 8th, the 20th day of the outbreak of the zombies, some shadows of zombies had already appeared in the village. They had wandered out from the town or the county. Through the monitor, I could keep an eye on their every move and didn't do much cleaning up. Although zombies were a threat, they were also a kind of protection at the same time. Some lone zombies wandered up to my doorstep from time to time, and Leo and I shot them one by one. On October 9th, our family began to take turns resting and monitoring every move in the village. The number of zombies gathering gradually increased, and the sounds and lights in the house also decreased a lot accordingly. I received a message from my ex-wife. Joseph, my mother is dead. She died right in front of me, and I could only watch helplessly. All of this is your fault. You wait. I will definitely make you live in regret and pain. Looking at the message on the phone, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. I was glad that God gave me a chance to be reborn and let me choose to leave such a person, even if there was no apocalypse. Living a lifetime with such a person would be a tragic life. This message also woke me up. Never have the intention to harm others, but always be on guard against others. In such an apocalypse, people's hearts will only be more unpredictable. On October 10th, the intermittent signal completely turned into in times. Only the local area network connected to the camera was still working stably, and the mobile phone and computer had all become useless. I could only play some standalone games occasionally to relieve boredom. Leo and I began to build the defense system of the courtyard. First, we electrified the iron plates around us to ensure that they could serve as a defensive barrier in case of anything. In addition, we used building materials to build high points around the courtyard to facilitate observation and shooting with bows and arrows. My father and Mark seemed to have regained the fighting spirit of their youth and were full of energy, especially in the aspect of reconnaissance. It was simply ingrained in their bones and blood, and they hadn't forgotten it. On October 15th, it had been nearly a month since the outbreak of the zombie virus. Several consecutive heavy rains didn't clear up the weather but made it even gloomier. A few dull clouds were floating in the dim sky, after the sun hid behind a layer of darkness. Only a patch of light could be seen, except for the occasional low, oppressive growls coming from the village. There were no other signs around. The chirping of insects and the singing of birds had also disappeared, as if they had all perished in this battle against the zombie virus. We still had a lot of food stored, and the vegetables in the field had also grown, but the whole family's mood wasn't very high. After all, no one knew what the future would be like. Is this really rain? It's more like mud. My mother was wearing a protective suit and using a rag to clean the stains on the solar panels, complaining in a muffled voice, "This isn't mud, these are the smoke and exhaust gases discharged into the sky, but they have returned to the ground with the rain." Those self-deceiving ideas of humans still need to be borne by themselves in the end. I took off the plastic covering the vegetables and washed them with well water. At this time, Leo, who was watching the monitor in the house, ran out with a panicked expression on his face and looked at me nervously. "Joseph, a group of people came to the entrance of the village. It seems that they are coming towards us." "How do you know?" I was surprised, because the leader is sister-in-law, 10, thinking of the message she sent before the internet connection was cut off. My heart suddenly skipped a beat for no reason. This woman is probably coming prepared. Ignoring the plastic cover, I immediately ran towards the house. The monitoring screen on the computer showed that a group of people had indeed appeared at the entrance of the village. About 20 people. These people were all carrying weapons and kept clearing out the wandering zombies in the village. They were in groups of 3, cooperating tacitly. The lone zombies had no chance but to be slaughtered in front of them. The only woman in the crowd was my ex-wife, who kept pointing in the direction of my house to the crowd. "Electrify the iron plates and take out all the bows and arrows." Leo nodded and immediately turned on the power switch. I switched the monitoring screen, and my heart became colder and colder. "No matter who you are, if you dare to pose a threat to my family, I will definitely make you pay the price." I walked out of the house, took a bundle of carbon arrows from Leo's hand, and climbed up to the high platform. At this time, those people had already appeared at the street entrance, menacingly. "Hey, I really didn't expect that there would be such a fortress in this dilapidated village. This place is really nice. Brother Faye, let's occupy this place." "Yeah, this girl said that they can still have hot pot, so there must be a lot of food stored inside. Let's stay here and save ourselves from running around." As the group of people got closer, I could clearly hear their conversation. In the apocalypse, there are no rules to restrain people, and desires dominate human nature. These people have already become corrupted. Someone noticed me on the watchtower. The man wearing sunglasses at the head beckoned to the crowd, and my ex-wife was pushed out amidst a burst of lewd laughter. I could see it clearly. The originally plump woman had become as thin as a skeleton. Her jet black hair had turned into something like straw, her eyes were dull and unfocused, and her hands subconsciously protected her body. The man wearing sunglasses rubbed his hand on her chin. "Brother, I heard that this is your wife. We've gone through a lot of trouble to bring her to you. As a reward, shouldn't you invite us in for something to eat?" A burst of laughter immediately erupted from the crowd, mixed with teasing whistles. "I have no relationship with her at all. This is my private residence. Please leave." My eyes swept over the crowd, and I raised my compound bow and shot an arrow at the ground at the feet of the man wearing sunglasses. The arrowhead sank deep into the soil, and the tail of the arrow was still swaying. Hearing the sound, my ex-wife turned around blankly. When she saw me, a flash of hatred suddenly appeared in her eyes. "Joseph, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you." A hoarse voice came from her throat. She opened her 5 fingers and made a gesture to step forward, but was firmly held back by the man wearing sunglasses. "Brother, you're being unethical. So many of us have escorted your wife for so many days. Even if we don't have any credit, we've at least put in a lot of effort. Now you have plenty of food and drink, but you're turning your back on us. How about this? You treat us brothers to a good meal, and we'll leave the woman here and go. What do you say?" The crowd had slowly started to move forward. I was too lazy to play along with their false pretenses. I raised my compound bow and shot an arrow at one of the people who was about to move forward. The arrow entered his abdomen, and the man let out a cry of pain and fell to the ground. This group of people immediately stopped hiding and rushed towards the iron plate like crazy. I immediately shot 2 arrows, but only one person was shot down at this time. The crowd had already climbed onto the iron plate that was more than 2 meters high and wanted to climb over it. I sneered coldly and stepped on the button in front of me. The iron plate was immediately electrified, and the people clinging to the top of the iron plate were instantly electrified and stiffened, with their bodies twitching. My father, Mark, and Leo also came to the high place with their compound bows, looking coldly at the crowd that had appeared. The arrowheads of the 4 crossbows glinted with a cold light, exuding a powerful sense of oppression. Seeing this, the man wearing sunglasses immediately shouted for a retreat, and the crowd dragged the few people who were still twitching from the electric shock and gradually moved away. Seeing the suspicious looks in my father's and mother's eyes, I finally told them everything, including the fact that I had been reborn. As soon as my mother heard that I had been left outside to die by my ex-wife and my mother-in-law, she couldn't help but curse. Even my father, who had a good temper, had his pupils dilated and his face turned pale with anger. The past is in the past. God gave me a second chance, and it's for me to protect the people I should protect. Those people just now will definitely not give up easily. We need to make some preparations in advance. Leo nodded and asked me what to do. I said fiercely, if they dare to come again, they won't be able to leave. 11. The whole family took action together. The smell of blood just now would definitely attract the attention of the surrounding zombies, and it wouldn't be long before they gathered here. That's exactly the effect we want. Countless zombies started to wander around, scattered both inside and outside the village. I took out a small speaker from home and installed it at the corner of the alley entrance. My father and Mark set up countless traps on this necessary path. There were bamboo skewers, iron nails, and trapping nets. Everything was available. In the afternoon, the whole family had a good meal to replenish their strength and quietly waited for the night to fall. At 2 o'clock in the morning, we finally saw the group of people who had appeared during the day today on the monitor. They were carrying a crudely made wooden ladder they had woven and were sneaking towards my house quietly. The moonlight was dim, and from time to time, the roars of zombies could be heard in the sky. With the help of the monitoring equipment set up in the dark, the path of the group of people was under our control. They're here. I nodded at Mark. Mark picked up an axe and cut through a thin rope hanging on a tree. The trap was triggered. After doing this, my father and I walked to the high platforms on both sides and moved the large searchlights fixed on them to new positions. When we found the right positions, Mark pressed the power switch. Click, the clear sound spread far in the silent night sky, and 2 silver-white rays of light immediately shot out. Under the gathered light, a group of people were illuminated. They covered their eyes with their hands, trying to block the intense light. 3 things wrapped in plastic bags were thrown into the crowd, immediately splashing everywhere. They were sticky and slippery. Blood, it's blood, someone in the crowd exclaimed, but we remained unmoved. I waved the flashlight in my hand towards the dark heights, and the sound of the machine operating was so ear-piercing. Roar, roar, roar. The iron plate separating the inside and outside of the village was lifted up, and the dull roars could be clearly heard. The smell of blood made the horde of zombies trapped in the fence go crazy, and they rushed straight towards the direction of the man wearing sunglasses and the others. Carbon arrows were shot into the crowd one after another. Once someone was hit, there would definitely be a wound. The strong smell of blood made the horde of zombies even more frenzied. There's an ambush, retreat quickly. The crowd woke up, and someone exclaimed. Unfortunately, it was too late. The traps became an obstacle for this group of people. The sharp bamboo skewers pierced through the flesh and blood, the sharp iron nails went through the insteps, and the people caught in the trapping nets could only be trapped in them, waiting for the arrival of the horde of zombies in despair. I pressed the Bluetooth speaker at the road entrance, and the song A Good Day resounded through every corner of the village. 12. I stood in front of the computer, looking at the cruel scene on the screen, and my heart was unusually calm. I watched my ex-wife being torn into countless pieces by the horde of zombies, and I didn't have any emotional fluctuations. In the apocalypse, I've seen too much life and death, not to mention that these people were trying to seize my home. As for my ex-wife, she personally sent me to the mouths of the zombies before I was reborn. The feud between us could only be resolved by the death of one of us. The battle lasted until the morning, and the area around the iron plate was filled with the corpses of dead zombies. Leo and I walked along the road leading to the entrance of the village. There were traces left by the zombies' bites all the way. Not far away, there were several trapping nets. The people inside, who had been bitten to pieces, had already turned into new zombies. I took out the iron knife I carried with me, dealt with them, and retrieved the trapping nets. On the way, I found a diamond earring. which was a gift I gave to my ex-wife when we got married. I casually kicked up a pile of soil with my foot and buried it underground. 13. Joseph, the bloodstains here are not right. I followed the sound, and Leo was pointing at a pool of blood in front of him. We followed the bloodstains forward to look for the source, and were suddenly attracted by a few low growls through a half-collapsed courtyard wall. Several zombies were wandering in the courtyard. These zombies weren't newly transformed. So where did this fresh blood come from? There was only one answer. There were people in the courtyard. I made a gesture of encirclement, and Leo understood immediately. He quietly crept to the other side. When we had taken our positions, we both shot the carbon arrows in our hands and killed the zombies in the courtyard one by one. After clearing the area, we didn't rush into the courtyard. Half of the house in the small courtyard had already collapsed, and the other half was standing crookedly in the middle. A few obvious bloodstains crossed the collapsed bricks and stones and disappeared behind the wooden door. Leo wanted to step forward, but I stopped him. Don't act rashly, we just need to wait for the prey to come to us. That group of people hadn't eaten for a whole night and were also injured. They couldn't hold on for long. Leo and I waited until the afternoon, and during that time, we ate some dry food to satisfy our hunger. The two people in the house finally couldn't stand it anymore and opened the wooden door and came out. On the left was the man wearing sunglasses, his face pale. A bamboo skewer was deeply inserted into his right thigh, and blood was flowing down his trouser leg. The person on the right was holding one of the man wearing sunglasses' arms and had his other hand supporting the man's side. His lips were chapped. Friend, we admit our defeat. Let us go and spare our lives. The man wearing sunglasses was already very weak. After saying these few words, he couldn't help but gasp for breath. Leo felt sorry for them and slowly put down his bow and arrow, showing a trace of compassion. At this moment, the two men made a move. The man wearing sunglasses endured the pain and grabbed at Leo, while the other man pulled out the hand that had been supporting the man wearing sunglasses. In his hand was actually a dagger glinting with a cold light. The two of them cooperated tacitly, one in front and one behind. Just as the man wearing sunglasses grabbed Leo's raised compound bow, a carbon arrow flew over and hit the other man's arm right on target. With a scream, the dagger fell to the ground. Leo was angry. He grabbed the man wearing sunglasses' arm and gave him a shoulder throw. There was a heavy sound of hitting the ground, followed by a muffled groan. The man wearing sunglasses, who was already weak, was knocked unconscious by the fall. I walked forward and picked up the dagger on the ground, ignoring the other man's pitiful pleas. I turned to look at Leo. He taught you an important lesson. Leo composed himself, opened the courtyard gate, and attracted a few zombies. The smell of blood made the zombies abandon Leo and rush straight towards the two men in the courtyard. The man wearing sunglasses woke up from the bite of the zombies, but then came desperate cries. When the other man saw this, he was so frightened that his face turned pale. He turned around and tried to run away from the scene, but due to the long-term hunger and blood loss, he fell to the ground again after running only a few steps. The horde of zombies pounced on him and tore him apart. We searched around the village again and finally confirmed the last person who had turned into a zombie among a group of zombies. None of my ex-wife and the group of people she brought with her escaped alive. We didn't know if there were still people here who knew about it, so we set up a lot of lures and traps on the periphery. At the same time, we widened the iron plate on the periphery again and set up a hollow isolation zone in the middle to facilitate buffering the impact of the horde of zombies and for maintenance. A week before the outbreak of the zombies, time passed gradually, and the degree of decay of the zombies' bodies was also increasing. Without the addition of new sources of zombie infection, these zombies would eventually turn into a pile of bones. I don't know how long the dark tide of the apocalypse will last, and I don't know when the mobile phone that has completely become a brick will be able to restore communication. It could be the next second, or it could be tomorrow, or it might never happen, but I know one thing clearly. The stored food reserves can support my family to live for a long time. The apocalypse has arrived. No matter what happens, we must protect the people we should protect.